Hello, my name is Frank Klausz, and I'm going to talk to you about dovetails. Some people may think it's a secret of making dovetails. It's never been a secret in my family. Dovetails are very ancient joints and is used very widely for all kinds of constructions. If we examine, most pieces of furniture is probably dovetailed together in the corner. If you look at these pieces, this top half of a chest on chest, if I remove the molding, you can clearly see the true dovetails, the pins and the tails. And it's a box. Within a box, it's another box, which is the drawer. It's also dovetails. If you think about it, we're not really cabinet makers. We are boxologists. And if you look at this little night table drawer, we can see also the back has the true dovetails, and the front has the half-blind dovetails. And the drawer bottom is put in with a groove. The back of a drawer is narrower, so it can receive the bottom. On this jewelry box, which is made by my son, the bottom is screwed on there, and the lid is hinged on with hinges. It is decorated with marquetry and banding, and the dovetails is also for decoration. Today, if we make dovetails, we like to display them. And early times, the dovetails was there for strength, and the craftsmen covered them up with the molding. Is another example of dovetails on the shaker step stool, where we have the dovetails for decoration, and they're also very strong. Let me show you how do I make dovetails. Believe me, making dovetails is easy. Anyone can do it. You have to pay attention to the details. The dovetail has pins and tails. The pins going in to the tails. It's a mechanical joint, and it comes apart only one way, this way. This way does not come apart even if the glue fails. I make the pins first. If there is any secret, maybe here is my secret. I make the pins, and these will be my templates. I don't use any template, any gadgets, bevel gauge. I don't even measure. I make the pins by hand, and then I use this to mark my tails. To do dovetails, I use a marking gauge, dovetail saw, a couple of chisels, and a mallet. I don't use a router. You don't need a router and a jigs. Making dovetails by hand just as fast, and hand-cut dovetails has character. I have these boards here, which I already cut to make a box. If we put them together, you can see it was one board. I sanded it already because it's much easier to sand a board that is together. I cut them to size. I make this my box front, back, and the sides. I put a marking on it, which is a scribble. I mark the outside and the top edge on all four pieces, on the side, on the back, and on the other side. The outside of the box and the top edge. Next, I have to use the marking gauge to mark the corners before I can cut the dovetails. I set up the marking gauge for the thickness of the wood. Lock it. Some people set the marking gauge so the end grain comes out a little bit or reversed. I try to make them as flush as I can. Since the dovetails goes into each other, I have to mark the thickness of the board on to the other board. So we have to mark the boards on all ends with one nice stroke with the marking gauge. This will be the depth of the cuts. So it's very important to mark them inside and outside. And do the same thing on the other end. I put the two short on the side because these are going to be the tails. I cut the pins first, so I clamp this board with the scribble outside into the bench. Then I'm ready to cut my pins. First I cut a half pin. Cut straight down to the marking gauge line. Now I cut another half pin. And if you look at that, we already have a big tail, which is bigger there and smaller here. If I would cut this out, it would work, but it wouldn't have much glue surface. So I have to divide this to more tails. So next I cut a full tail. Cut down straight to the marking gauge line. Now this distance I divide by I in the middle. This is not the middle. You can do better than that. This is the middle. So I cut down approximately. It's not very critical. And come back to this first angle and put the saw there to the middle and cut down to the straight marking gauge line. And do it again. So now I have the 2 half pin, the 2 full pin, and the 3 tails. I do the same thing on the other side. A half pin, another half pin, and now a full tail. The thickness of the wood in here, approximately. And now divide this space in half, right there. Cut down to the line. And now go back to this first angle, and I divide these spaces again in half. And I do this on both ends on the 2 boards. The next step is to chisel it out. If you look at my chisel, I am undercutting a little bit. Means I cut this way, not square, but undercut just a little bit. And now I take a little chips and take them out. And tap down more, a touch undercut. Turn it over and do the same thing from the other side. Put the chisel just a touch before the line, and when you tap on it, it will walk back to the line. And do the same on all tails. You can't force your chisel too hard. If your chisel is sharp, it will cut fast anyway. If your chisel is dull and you're hitting it too hard, it will break out the fibers. You need sharp chisel and patience, and your dovetail will be beautiful clean. Have to be careful because now they're popping out. They're just straight going out there. Then do the same thing on the other ends. And now I finished my templates. And yes, they are all a little bit different. But if I position them to the right place, they will be just fine. So what I got to do is make sure the scribing is down to the bench, the scribble, and facing each other, just like that. And now I put my pins onto the end with the marking outside, put it there, nice and flush on the outside and on 2 sides, and mark it with 1 sharp pencil line. The same on the other side. With 1 pencil line. And now I put this on the side. I'm done with that. And I flip this like that, and I reach for the other piece. There is no way you can make a mistake. Flip it over, and there you have it. I cut down on those lines, I chisel out for these 2 full pins and cut away these 2 half pins. Now we're cutting the tails. Cutting the tails, you have to be more careful. When you're cutting pins, a little bit this way, a little bit that way, doesn't matter. Here it does. You have to be careful to cut down the line at the waist side to the marking gauge lines, straight across. And stop at the marking gauge line right there. Start on a backstroke. Let's do the other side. And now I have to cut off the half pins. Be cutting straight across and straight down at the marking gauge line. Start on a backstroke, cut down on the marking gauge line. Same on the other end. I do this on all 4 corners. And now we're ready to chisel it out. Put the 2 boards top on each other. Clamp it down tight. And chisel. Put the chisel just before the marking gauge line and tap it. Notice my waist is full thickness on the end. I need this to be a support when I turn it over so the fibers don't break out. Chisel halfway through from each side. So now I flip it over and do the same thing from the other side. And now I have to push them straight out because the dovetail shape, I just push them out like this. So let's see how does it fit. If your dovetail is too tight, you can chisel a little more, or once the glue gets on, it swells up a little bit. The wood is forgiven. This is just right. What am I doing is paying attention to the scribbles, and I'm lining them up. The scribble facing that way, this scribble has to face that way, so that should fit here just like that. And here is our box. After it's glued, it will need a top and bottom. I already prepared these 2 boards. Will be the bottom and the top. It's bull-nosed and it's sanded. And the bottom will be screwed onto that, just like that. And the top will be hinged with a couple of hinges, just like this. And here is one of the many use of dovetails. And you can do this if you try. Good luck with it.